There are a lot of different sole grinds when it comes to Titleist Vokey design wedges. You've got the S, the F, the M, the K, the D, but there are more exotic grinds out there too. There's the T, the V, and the A. And now you can add the A plus grind too. Like just about all of the Titleist Vokey design wedges, the A plus grind was born on the PGA Tour. The story of the A plus grind goes like this. Starting several years ago, Jeff Ogilvy took his L grind lob wedge to Aaron Dill. Aaron Dill is the person who was in charge of all of Titleist Vokey design wedges on the PGA Tour. He's their PGA Tour rep. And he told Aaron that his L grind wedge was going a little bit slow through the turf and that he wanted to know if Aaron could do anything for him. So what Aaron did was grind out portions of the bounce on the back of the sole, basically creating a very smooth area, taking out what's referred to as the ribbon. After a few rounds of testing and prototyping, this is the wedge that eventually landed in Jeff Ogilvy's bag. This is an A grind wedge, and what this wedge has is very low bounce, but it has a very clean, very slick sole right here. So it's going to go through the turf and through the sand really quickly, which is what Ogilvy was looking for. Well, that seemed to work out so well that Aaron Dill did the exact same thing with Bob Vokey's most favorite wedge, the M grind wedge. And you can see, once again, there's a ribbon in the back of this wedge. It only has 8 degrees of bounce, but that ribbon for some players was slowing down the interaction with the turf. It was slowing the club as it was going through the impact zone. So after Dill ground out the sole and basically smoothed out an M grind wedge, he was left with this. This is the A plus grind, and you're going to find this wedge right now in the bags of players like Jason Day and Adam Scott and several other players on the PGA Tour. So up until now, when Titleist just made this A plus grind available through its WedgeWorks programs, this club has never been available to the general public. This has been a tour-only wedge offering. Now, from a material and a construction standpoint, the A plus grind wedge through WedgeWorks is going to be very similar to many of the SM10 wedges that are out there from Vokey right now. However, there are a couple of differences. This is cast 8620 carbon steel, just like all of the SM10 wedges. However, it's only going to be available for right-handed players, and it is only available in a raw finish. Now, raw finishes are preferred by many players on the PGA Tour because if they do need to do a little bit of grinding or personalization, maybe take out a little bit of material in the heel or the toe area, do something different to the sole, raw steel over time will rust and corrode and weather and patina uniformly. Whereas if you do the same thing to a chromed wedge and you take off a little bit of material, that exposed area where you have ground off the chroming and you've exposed the steel underneath, that will rust and patina out, while obviously the chrome portion will not. So visually, pros like to see a uniform surface. That's the biggest reason why they go for raw steel wedges. Now, just like every one of the SM10 wedges that you would buy in a store, all of the grooves are individually inspected to make sure that they are right up to the USGA limit in terms of sharpness, in terms of volume. They are as sharp as the USGA allows. And like the other Titleist Vokey design SM10 lob wedges, the brand has put more mass behind the top line up here in the top of the golf club to elevate the center of gravity. The benefit of that is that you're going to get a lower, more piercing ball flight. With 58 or 60 degrees of loft, getting the ball up in the air is not going to be a problem. But hitting moonshots or getting the ball to elevate too much can take away from distance control. It can make it harder to be precise. So most accomplished golfers are with their lob wedge, they want to be able to drive the ball in slightly lower with more spin so it stops quicker on the greens. This wedge is designed to help you do that. So I had the opportunity to get obviously an A plus grind lob wedge. In this case, it's a 60-degree wedge. And what's really interesting to me is that I have had the saran wrap off of this wedge for maybe just over a week, and it is already starting to get little bits of rust and little bits of patina coming over the top of it. We've got that midsummer high humidity, high temperatures here in the Northeast, and as soon as you take the wrapping off of this and start playing with it, getting the wedge wet with chip shots, pitch shots, getting into some bunkers that might have morning dew still into them, that moisture is going to right away get into this raw steel, and immediately you start to notice different areas where it is going to start to wear and start to rust. From a performance standpoint, I thought that this wedge was fantastic in bunkers. I'm a big fan for recreational players such as myself. I carry about a 10 handicap of going with this wide sole design. I think this is really beneficial for people because even if you don't have the highest amount of stated bounce, going with the wide sole design creates more effective bounce when you open up the face and you basically expose more of the loft. As you're trying to add loft, you're adding bounce as well. And that big area there, that wide sole, does a fantastic job of getting through the sand. So if you're somebody who struggles with sand, but you might not want to go with a really high bounce lob wedge, I think this could be a very, very interesting option. I found chipping and pitching with it was really good. Again, with 8 degrees of bounce, you're not in a low bounce situation. So for me, low bounce wedges are really a challenge because the turf tends to be very soft. I can be a little bit steep, and so I'm gonna dig with low bounce wedges. Low bounce wedges, 4 degrees, 6 degrees, that's a player who's basically gonna skim over the turf, takes very small divots and has a very shallow angle of attack. I'm not skilled enough, most cases, to be able to hit good short game shots with low bounce wedges. I prefer moderate and higher bounce, and I found that the bounce on this worked out to be really, really good. From a looks perspective, again, this is subjective. It is a classic teardrop shape in the address position. It looks like other Vokey SM10 wedges, and I think that's a good thing. I think it would be very interesting if there was a little bit of material that had been ground out of the heel so you could open up this wedge and get underneath the ball a little bit more easily on somewhat tight lies. Again, you get that with the M grind wedge. The M has quite a bit of material that's been taken out of both the heel and the toe, and that's one of the reasons why it's Bob Vokey's most favorite wedge. But this one is, while it's wide, is also relatively straight. Now, anytime you're taking a fresh wedge out of the saran wrap and out of the coating and you start to hit chips and pitch shots with it, you should be able to see and feel a lot of spin coming off of the face, and that was clearly the case. 60 degrees of loft, fresh grooves, generating spin should not be a problem. Getting the ball up in the air should not be a problem, and from just about every instance, that was the case. Even when I was hitting some pitch shots out of wet rough, the ball just seemed to pop right up. I did not have too much of a problem, and I noticed that it had a lot more bite. If there is a downside to the A+ grind wedge, it is the price. This is $225, and for players who use their lob wedge often, if you're somebody who might go through a wedge in 2 seasons, 1.5 seasons, for recreational golfers, that's probably as fast as you would go through the grooves before you started to see deterioration. That's a lot of money for a wedge. 225 bucks is a lot of money for a wedge. It's also available only in right hand. My son is left-handed, so I'm always looking out for my lefty friends out there. It would be great if this was also available as a left-handed offering. But at the same time, it's still really cool that Titleist is bringing stuff that had been previously tour only to the public. So you can get this on WedgeWorks, on Titleist website. You can go to Titleist authorized dealers, and they should be able to get an A+ grind for you as well. Talk to a good custom fitter. Make sure before you go out and buy this wedge for $225, make sure you hit it. Make sure that it makes sense for you. Make sure that you're putting this lob wedge in for a reason, and that it matches up both with your swing and the turf and course conditions that you're going to be finding most often. Look, if you have questions about the Titleist Vokey design WedgeWorks A+ grind lob wedge, be sure to drop them in the comment area below. I do try and keep an eye on the comments and answer them for you. If any questions at all about any of the Titleist Vokey wedges, it's a pretty wide matrix out there. It's a real alphabet soup of different sole grinds and configurations. I can try and answer those questions for you too. It would also be fantastic if you would like, comment, subscribe to this video as always, and I look forward to seeing you again really, really soon. Thanks.